welcome to the Product Design for Learning podcast. This week we have two guests on. Would you guys like to introduce yourselves and tell us why you're here? And before I forget, because I forget it all the time, our topic this week, it will say on Spotify as well, is L&D conferences. So we're going slightly off process, but we have two lovely guests with us, and I will let them introduce themselves, and I'll shut up for a second. Over to you guys. Who are you and why are you here?
Okay.
Go ahead, Anamaria.
Yes, I can go first. I was like, ice cubes. Yeah, my name is Anamaria. I am based out of Amsterdam, and I am currently working for myself. I'm a learning and community consultant and team up with different organizations, all sides, backgrounds, on topics, challenges related to community building, social learning, or learning experience design and facilitation. Also, I started a community practice for learning and development professionals, which is where I've met Dinye, and it's also kind of intertwined with our topic today, that of a conference for L&Ds. This community is called L&D Shakers, a online, offline, global community for L&D professionals as well. And that's where I met Dinye a few years back. It seems like yesterday. So Dinye, take it away.
Thank you. Yes, hi everyone. My name is Dinye, and I've been in L&D for 7 years. And I was calculating as I was preparing for our conversation today. We've actually met 5 years ago, Anamaria. So because that was also my switch from corporate L&D to startup L&D. So that's what I've been doing. I've been building and establishing L&D departments in startups and scale-ups. So here startups, 100 people, so not like garage size startup. And it's been fun. I need to wear a lot of hats, and that's part of the charm. Very entrepreneurial, very creative, but also sometimes very lonely. That's why I joined the L&D community that Anamaria built. And I'm here today because I published an article about L&D conferences. A lot of emotions before I hit that publish, but it started a lot of conversation around the current state and what L&D professionals are looking for when it comes to these conferences. So and somehow it leads to this conversation today.
Amazing. Thank you both. And I will add the congratulations on L&D Shakers. That's how I actually found both of you guys, and it's brilliant. So everyone join it. It's really good. There's my little advert for it. Cool. As we said, we're going to talk about L&D conferences today, and just in case anyone starts to jump on us, this is not a jumping out or attacking anyone. We're just talking about it. We're going to have some discussion. We might disagree. And we did ask some other people, which I'm not going to name. We asked some other people to come on, and they didn't respond. So, we go with who said yes and who wants to talk about it. So that is that. That's my little disclaimer. We're not attacking anyone. There's no malice, so just to set the tone. But the first thing we wanted to ask you guys was how you first engaged with L&D conferences. So right back when... and we were just saying before we started recording, I think my first one was LearnTech. But I can't quite remember, but I think it was LearnTech. Dinye, what was your first learning conference you went to? What did you take from it? Was there any benefits?
Yes. So I have attended a couple of gatherings among L&D professionals, but I think the first big real one that's in a proper venue with hotels and speakers and lineups and thousands of participants was Online Educa Berlin. So I'm based in Berlin, and I was like, it's home turf. I don't need to stay in a hotel. And I went there and I learned about it through a friend who then also made it possible that I attend the conference. I was invited as speaker, but you still need to pay as a speaker. But because That's a point that we can discuss later. But thankfully, she understood my situation. I was in startup, there's no budget. And she was like, you know what? You can come for free. And that was great. So it was a great first experience. Because I got to experience it in three different ways, as a normal audience, as a speaker, but also because my friend is part of the committee. I also got the behind the scenes stage, and
Nice.
got into conversations that I might not get into if I'm a normal participant. And yeah, if the question is, would I recommend it to other L&D professionals? Then depends on what you were looking for. At that time, I knew what I signed up for. I personally don't really like big gathering, so I don't have a lot of expectations because I know myself that I'm not going to be attending like big parties or any of this. And that was great, but I naturally always come with a critical mind to any
Mm.
things that I attend. And that was also kind of like my first love hate story with conference. It's like, oh yeah, I truly enjoy it, and this,
Yeah.
and I got network. But are there points where I'm like, why? And I wish there were more. And
Yeah.
that was my first touch with the L&D conference.
Amazing. Thank you. There's a couple of things you mentioned I want to come back to in a second. But Anna Marie, same questions for you. What was if you can remember your first conference, and did you take anything away from it?
So actually I had to think about that because I don't really kind of remember for sure. I'm going to go with OEB as well. So the same conference that Dinye mentioned. I come from HR. My background is human resources. And so I used to attend conferences on HR and people and culture, etc. I want to say that there was a difference, but there wasn't. So it's just the topics were different, but nothing else was different. We can talk though about later on, if it's interesting, about design conferences that have a totally different vibe than our conferences in our field, which was also eye-opening for me. But yes, I think it was two years and a half, probably. Or I attend OAB as a participant and also as a speaker. I paid to speak as well. I was there. It was interesting. It was great to see so many peers in the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
For me, I spoke I think it was called a panel, like a speaking panel. But it was called a panel, but it was not a panel format like you would imagine it with Q&A. And so we all had, I think, 20 minutes. We were 3 speakers. We had 20 minutes to kind of share something, bring a case, like present our stuff. And then we had some questions from the audience, quite a few, and with the moderator. So I really enjoyed the process of preparing that, like the format, preparing that. They paired us based on it. We talked about social learning and communities of practice. And so I was paired with 2 other practitioners, and it was really fun to see the type of work that they were doing and how we overlapped and how we kind of prepare something of value for the audience. But yeah, generally just very, very big in a hotel. Like the vibe was it's not the coziest one. You kind of move around. And so I was lucky that I knew some people there, and that made it, much easier. But I actually remember thinking, if I would have been here alone, you have to be a certain type of person to go, and because there's a lot of people that go with their teams, etc. So you could really look around and see that they're like in small packs. So if you're alone, it really takes a type of personality to go there and kind of attach yourself to a table and be like, hi, I know you guys are talking here, and it seems like you're all getting along and you kind of know each other, but I'm Anamaria. What's up? Can I have a coffee with you? So and I am an extrovert. So that was a reflection that I remember living with. Like, it's very hard to mingle.
Yes.
Because there was not really a design for that. Like it wasn't designed as such. So it was all left to us as participants. Yeah.
I interestingly saw, I think it was on LinkedIn, it was like a little clip of somebody else's podcast, and they were talking about, not about learning conferences at all, but just about events. And they'd said they used to be quite afraid of going in on their own and just speaking to strangers. And they'd said, they did say it's not as easy as it sounds, but they said, then one day I just thought, you know what? Let's just try and talk to as many people as possible. The worst thing they can say is, I don't want to talk to you right now. Then you just find someone else. And I was thinking, yes, that is way harder than it sounds. You can't just walk into a room and be like, I'm going to go and talk to 600 people. I always find it a bit odd. Like you say, if you go into a learning conference, I've done both, where I've gone with a group of people and gone on my own. But I think around how it's designed. So you both mentioned about kind of large groups of people being in a hotel, and it's not the most enjoyable, or maybe like the most what's the word I'm looking for? Like the most nurturing environment for people to learn and to network and to kind of get together. So if we were talking about a kind of a dictionary definition of L&D conferences in the whole, how would you guys describe that? If someone had said, I've never been to one, what is this thing?
What is it like right now, or how we would love it to be?
Let's go with what it's like right now.
A definition. I don't know. So I might describe it as an online or offline, sometimes both parallel tracks, I think, in the latest years, a gathering of L&D professionals, practitioners, researchers coming together and around a predefined agenda or lineup with pre-selected speakers that bring together topics related to the field. Usually gathers a big crowd, and you're basically sitting, looking at the speaker lineup for a day, sometimes several days in a row, mingling with people, and feel like your head's exploding by the time it's done, and you have to head home, head back home. That's at least how I always felt like, oh no, this was tough. I feel like I need a week to kind of digest and go back to my notes and see what am I doing with everything that I'm taking away.
Yes. Yeah.
Dinny, how about you?
Got the same question, but I wanted to touch on your article that you shared, because and if you're comfortable, we'll put the link in the comments afterwards. But I really resonated with almost every single point you said, where I was like, yeah, I'm glad someone's saying this. There's just lots of nodding and going, yeah. But like, how does that play into, I guess, your definition of a learning conference, as in to date?
Yeah. As I've said, like I've also attended conferences in my previous life. I was in innovation management, so a lot of this like startup conferences, tech conferences. So I know what I kind of expected, or what I should and could expect from these conferences. But I think I had a little bit more expectation because it was a learning and development conference. So, like we always say it as a profession, learning is more than just an event. It's not a one-time thing. And to me, the conferences that we have today feels exactly like that. Like it's a one-time thing, and it's doing everything that we as a profession have been saying is wrong, that doesn't contribute to learning. And to me, my intention when I go to conference is to learn, to burst my bubble, to hear something new. And, if I have to put a definition of what L&D conference looks like now, then it's the opposite of what I want that definition to be.
Yes.
And that's kind of, I talk to people, I talk to my friends, I talk to my colleagues who have also attended similar conferences, and they all kind of say the same thing. The one who come from corporate, they don't really criticize it, because for them, it's already a highlight to set aside a block of time and learn something new. Whereas for my context, where my business context change every other day, there's a pivot and reorganization or whatever not. And to me, change is something that's constant. I was always on the look for anything new. So when I sit to conference and it's nothing new, then I'm like, why am I here? So all this different, and at the same time, I know the organizing committees. I respect them. These are the thought leaders, the one who's been doing this work day in and day out. Some of them have been doing it for 30 years. I don't know if I have the patience and the nerves and that persistence to do a conference for 30 years. And I know what goes behind the scenes. So I respect all of that. But I think, like, to me, the reason why I wrote that article, and I was like, you know what, I'm just going to put it out there in the most respectful way possible. And I did tag like the ones who are creating this, because to me it's like it's all our shared responsibility. If I know that it's not just me who feel this thing, then let's surface it. Let's turn it into a conversation. Whatever, however it's going to land, and whatever they're going to do with this input, they can say, you know what, whatever, you've been in this space for what, 7 years? I've been here 30 years. So maybe my statements or my questions were not valid, or they're just like, you don't know the reality. But I just think I don't like it. I don't like it when people complain and don't tell me what I should improve. So I'll walk that talk and I click publish.
I'm glad you did. And it was one that I was chatting to someone earlier this morning, actually, about something completely different. And I can't remember there is a very famous philosopher, and I'm going to kick myself afterwards when I Google it. But whoever said madness is doing something repeatedly and expecting a different result. And someone's going to tell me in a second, I'll be like, oh yeah, that guy. But I feel like that's what conferences are at the moment, as in they literally run the same format, the same things, largely the same speakers, or at least the topics stay the same, but the speakers change. And it kind of feels a bit like, so I have this kind of love-hate relationship with LinkedIn for the same reason, in that we have this democracy of vocalization, as in anyone can say anything they want. And if it builds a little bit of traction, someone runs with it. And I feel like conferences are the same thing, where we, as an industry, when was it, maybe 6 months ago, whenever it was, everyone seemed to be talking about AI. But then all of a sudden, everyone was an expert on it. And I was like, I don't think all of you are. I think maybe some of you have never used it. I'm certainly not an expert. And it felt a bit like, you look at most of the conferences, and someone had also said to me, a big learning conference, which I won't mention the name, and said, I only go like every 3 or 4 years now, because that feels like the pace of change for that conference. And we kind of got into it a little bit, and I was like, do you know what? Maybe you're wrong. Maybe people are changing. Maybe, like, as you were saying, Dinny, like, people are walking the talk, and they're doing things that they shouldn't be doing. Sorry, they're not doing things that they say that we're doing in conferences. But then I looked at the topics. Storytelling was always up there. Leadership, for some reason, was always there. AI started to come in, and then it was almost like the same keynote speakers, just at a different conference, just saying the same sort of things, these same very inspirational talks, but with no real substance. And then just a sea of people watching them, just going, yeah, oh yeah, very interesting. And then they all go home. Like, felt a bit mad. I'll get off my soapbox. But where are we, as a question for you guys, where are we as an industry missing an opportunity to grab those people that have been here 30 years, that maybe have lived some really, really good experiences that we could all hear from, as well as some really young and new voices in the industry that are saying, I'm brand new and I come at this from a completely different angle on the same topic. Like, where are we missing an opportunity or missing a trick?
The thing that comes to mind for me first is participation. I feel they're very one-sided, and maybe that's the definition of what a conference is by design. Yeah. But we can do better, and there are conferences out there that are more playful with the formats. And they usually, because they happen once a year and they're quite big, and in every single industry there are 2, 3, 4 conferences on a global scale running for years, and those are it. Every now and then, like, kind of someone new comes in with some smaller type of event, which is a bit more indie, etc. Otherwise, those are the conferences that are attracting the brightest minds of our industry. And I'm not talking about the experts that step on the stage. I'm talking about the participants, the VPs of learning, the director, the CLOs, but even the new the new peers or colleagues that are just stepping out of the university and they're seeing the world with different eyes. And for me, every time I think about that, because I'm so used, I guess, with smaller formats, courses, workshops, just things where there's this intimate, smaller group. And maybe because we're intimidated by the scale, we kind of think that you cannot go and design for participation or conversation amongst participants because you have thousands of people. And it's not easy, but it's most definitely possible. You will have to potentially ditch some of the slots and redesign the agenda a little bit. But that's definitely possible. So for me, that's one thing. How do we include formats that are more participatory? Like I've been to design conferences, they have workshops. People work around the table. They prototype, they converse, they debate. They have their speakers on the stage, but there's so many things happening around that. So it's almost as if it's those 2 days or like like a playground of things, and you can move around and pick and choose what's happening. There's workshops, there's fishbowl conversations, there's World Cafe tables or round tables of discussions around topics. You don't always need to have an expert sage on the stage to learn from them. Not that that's wrong, but that's kind of how you open up to this variety of ideas from the audience. That's one thing. And I had another point, which is gone now, so I'm passing it on to Dinye, and maybe it's coming back to me. Yeah, I don't know.
Yes.
It was really good, though. It's gonna come back.
I totally agree with participation. To me, like our world is too complex to be simplified by the same person over and over again within a decade. The problems, the issues that we're facing are too diverse to be represented by only very few voices. So to your point, Anamaria, I think yes, it is. That's why to me, like I call the organizer to create a design that is participatory where, I have nothing against the researchers or the academics, but as a practitioner who is in the trenches day in, day out and know how difficult it is to manage stakeholders, I cannot help but feel annoyed when I hear someone that's never there and then say, oh, here are the top 10 things you have to do. I was like, thanks, live my life and then tell me about it. While at the same time, I think it can be a much more enriched conversation if both voices are, and all kind of voices are there. The researchers, the thought leaders, the one who is doing consulting, like as an external, the one who is doing the work, and to design a stage or like a platform where all these voices, and there are participatory designs out there that can be used. It will be a challenge to do it for thousands of people, but there are ways, and that's why it's like it can be done if you want to. But I know it's not the most economic or efficient thing, perhaps. But at the same time, sometimes I'm also criticizing my fellow practitioners who come to these conferences because OEB, fun fact, they also have these different formats for workshop, fishbowls, debate, etc. But so it's located on a different floor, and there is a different floor for like these keynote speeches, etc. Most people go to the keynote speeches because why? Because it's comfortable. They sit, they listen, they feel like they gain something. But truly, when you ask, okay, which of this can you apply? Then no. Then why are you not using the workshop room? Why are you not going to the playground session? So that's why to me, I wanted to address both parties. Like it's like I think it's fair to call organizers to be more innovative and to be more inclusive, but it's also fair to ask fellow practitioners to ask more, to be more present, and to actually walk the talk as learning professionals and learn. They know that's not how learning will happen, by listening to keynote speakers. So that, to me, like, participation is really one thing, and looking for diverse voices. And
Yes.
the thing with us practitioners, we're sometimes not very good at telling our stories. Whereas if you are, professional speakers, you are good. You
Mm.
are charismatic. You attract crowd. Um, and that, to me, also like a gap that we could fill. Then let's teach these awesome practitioners who are doing really great work to present their work. And even if it's not perfect, for me,
Mm.
there's also this practice element that is missing from
Mm.
conference. It all needs to be shiny and best practices and innovative and all the good stuff. And we don't hear the sob stories of, yep, I did that, didn't happen. And I know there is, confidentiality clause or anything, but I think if we are truly learning professionals, then we should also embrace those part of uh, like perfecting our craft that involves failures, mistakes, sob stories of failing to convince people.
Absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things that I was thinking about when we were kind of designing the questions for our chat today was when we talk about product design with a client, completely away from conferences, just about a product, whether it's whatever it's going to be. And I'm sure you guys do this as well. One of the first things we ask them is, what's happening right now? Why do you know it's a problem? And what is your goal? Like if you had, a magic wand or all the unlimited budget, all the unlimited resource, what's the best thing that you would like to happen? And how do you know that that's happening? What are you measuring, or what are you spotting, what are you seeing? And then we kind of work backwards and sort of break their problem down and how, how everything's broken out. When we attend conferences, and I'm generalizing here for everyone in the L&D industry, we don't really go with a goal apart from, I'd like to learn something, or it will be great to see that speaker. And it's like, well, you could just read their LinkedIn profile, probably watch a video of them talking, or I don't know, like, but what's the real reason you're going there? Especially if it's like £1,500 or something to go. That's a lot of money to go. Whether you're paying for it, your company's paying for it, someone somewhere is paying for it. So if I said to you, it's £1,500 of your money, it's going to come out of your paycheck this month, you're going to go and do something with that, and it's got to have a benefit to you as a learning professional. I can't imagine many people that would say, yeah, I'll spend that money from my pocket and I'll go to that conference and I will get something. This very ambiguous something that they're going to get. So yeah, I find it a bit mad, but then I wanted to kind of segue in to you guys creating your own conference, the L&D Shakers conference, and how that's, so what was the tipping point where you said, this is crazy, we've got to do our own thing? At what point did you just kind of go
So it
ahead?
didn't really happen like that, to be honest. Like we didn't set out to do that because we were necessarily unhappy with, it wasn't a rebellious act. Like we weren't going against something that was there. It was an idea that came out of our local hub here in Amsterdam. So L&D Shakers is a global online community, but we have hubs, offline gatherings in 16 cities around the world. Amsterdam is one of them. And it's been led by 3 wonderful shakers. And they came up with the idea and they reached out one day. It's like, why don't we do like a conference, like a bigger gathering with maybe over 100 people, maybe 100, 150. Let's see, something that it's not massive, but still kind of bigger than our 20, 30 people meetups. And I said, sure, fantastic. But if you do that, I want you to think, how is that different than any other conference out there?
Mm-hmm.
And because everything we do in L&D Shakers kind of has to live up to our identity of shaking things up. Whenever we come up with ideas to play with, there's always this lens that we look at. How can we shake this things up? And they had already the team had very specific expectations. I was then part of the volunteering team. We ended up, they put a call to action. That's how we work in the community. Someone has an idea, they want to bring it to life. They put a call to action out there, and then we rally a team of volunteers to bring it to life. And so I was part of the 10-persons team that brought this nonference, as we called it, to life, because we said, if this is not a conference, then what is it? It's not a conference, so it is a nonference. And we really, I think the biggest thing that we did was to very intentionally turn on its head your typical conference and everything that we just talked about. These expert status folks coming to take the stage, the people that you see everywhere all the time, and you kind of know what they're going to talk about, and try to put our community of practice flavor to it. So less about perfection and experts, more about daring and trying to break things and do things differently, and exposing ourselves to the risk that that's not going to work, or that we're going to sit there and it's going to feel uncomfortable or weird or strange. And also for us as a group that brought this to life, we really were, what do I want to do? Like, how do I use this as a learning opportunity? And so we really look at it through that very mindfully purpose. This has to be different. That was the first goal. This has to be different. Second, this has to have a Shakers flavor. We're all about connection. We're all about just equality. I guess we're very spoiled in communities of practice because we don't have necessarily this expert guru status. Like, everyone's an expert in something today. Tomorrow you ask a question, you get a reply for someone that asks another question the other day. So it's like we're all just learning and at the same time. So I know something that you might know, and we kind of cross-pollinate. And so everyone's an expert and everyone's a novice at something.
Yes.
So we kind of are very equalized from that perspective. And so we're very spoiled when it comes to that. And we really went on there with the idea to design an experience. So we wanted to showcase to our peers and to ourselves how far can you stretch this concept of a conference? So it was almost an experiment for us as well. And we took a lot of inspiration, and actually the methodology that we used in the back end of the design was experience design. It was not even learning experience design. It was pure, how do I design an experience for 120 people we ended up being in the room that spent one day together. And the purpose is to explore learning. So I can go into the design if that's interesting, but that was kind of how we started, almost as an incubator, think tank, creative experiment to see what is possible, with the main purpose of doing it and see what works and what doesn't, and what you can steal away to your conference maybe, or to your events at home or in your organization, etc. And generally just to push the boundaries a bit further. I think that was very exciting for everyone who was involved. Like, I don't know, let's break it and let's see what happens. Like, how bad can it be, you know?
Yeah.
So but we did have the safety of a community and like-minded people that were like, everyone was like, let's experiment.
Sorry, after you.
Just one thing. Yeah, sorry, just one thing here related to Ardini's article. I haven't read through all of the comments, but I think there was quite a big conversation around this. If I pay for a conference, then I expect state of the art. And somehow we still, unfortunately, state of the art equals experts and people with many, many years of experience. And state of the art cannot mean experimenting or failing and see what doesn't work and so on. And so we weren't burdened by those expectations in our community of practice bubble, where it's all about learning and failing. So I think that was definitely a plus that maybe other conferences don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. I was actually going to bring that up. So to Dinny's point about working with startups and people being on stage and saying, this is how you manage stakeholders, is the example you gave, and you're sitting there just kind of raging inside going, no, that's not how it happens. And especially the point you made about people sharing their failures. So I've mentioned on this podcast a number of times about a particular project that I'd worked on in a previous role, loved it, hadn't shared it with anyone at this point. I was like, this is great. Took it to a couple of markets. They destroyed it within seconds. But then there was so early stages where I was like, great, I can take all their feedback and why they hate it, what was going to work. Turned it around, took it back to them, did that a few times, and then eventually ended up with something that was really, really good and actually ended up being quite successful, which I was quite happy with. But if I'd gone with the original, just me and a few friends sitting nearby to go, hey, look what I've done, and just everyone sort of nodding, going, yeah, this is great, would have been a huge waste of time. So taking that ethos into creating a conference where it's not huge big name speakers, it's not kind of flashy, and people are being quite open to, I'm paying to be at a conference but I might fail at something. How does that play into and we'll come to you in a second, Anamaria, but I was going to ask, how does that play into the Shakers community and the people you see at other larger scale conferences? But then, Dinny, to your point around working with startups, again, we talk to people about product design for learning around, think of every product as if it's your first product you're releasing as a company. You don't have a backup plan because it's your first product. You don't have a second chance to make a first opinion or a first impression. So this has to work. So you really have to, and you also have to move at speed, like way quicker than if you're working in a corporate. So how does this kind of shift in kind of conference mindset kind of play into the people that you're spending a lot of time with in the kind of startup world?
I hope I interpret your question correctly. But to me, the big conference, they will always have their own audience because that's an industry. That's an industry on its own. That's what they sell. They sell the big names. They sell the glamorous experience. There is party. There is the fancy networking and all of this. There's also like, rubbing shoulders with the experts, etc. So I think that will always stay. And some of the organizers commented on the article themselves. So they DM me as well. And most of them, not all of them, were very gracious. It's like, thank you for that call out. They tried to like defend why they did the things that they did, which I also completely understand. It's economic. Sure. Like they need to do that. Absolutely. They need to follow trends. They need to attract big names, all of this. However, these days with the reality, it's not only in startups that L&D is getting more constrained with resources. It's not only in startups that L&D is being asked to change very quickly and to adapt very quickly to deliver real business impacts. So, and I think, with Nonference, with many other smaller communities who are like trying to provide a different kind of experience, that will be if you think of L&D conference as a product, that's an established product. That's the brand premium product that most people will know and most people will go. But there will be people who are going to look for medicine and not just vitamins. And these are the ones who will go into this community of practices who is ready to get dirty and showcase their vulnerabilities and discuss about failures and all of this stuff, because the point of them going there is to get better, not to just get inspiration or learn about the newest stuff. And that, to me, like when I go to a conference, the reason, because when you go to a conference and either you talk about the shiny things of the year, AI, metaverse, whatever you call it, or you talk about this best practices in leadership and storytelling, but there is no continuity in there. To me, looking at it as a practice okay, I learned about AI this year in this conference, and here I go as practitioner implementing what I learned in that conference, and next year I'll report back about what I did with that AI, and that can look like failure and that can look like success. And having that continuity and having that mindset of like going to conference as like a practice moment of sharing your steps, is much more powerful as a learning experience for me than just going. That's a very expensive inspiration and
Yes,
time
yes.
consuming learning experience. And that doesn't really bring anything to my work. So that's why I personally would rather go now. Like I decided myself, I would probably go still to these
Hmm.
L&D conferences every 5 years or so, just to see where we are standing as industry in general. But if I'm really looking for practice, then I'm going to go for smaller ones.
Mm. And it makes me laugh that storytelling is still high up on the agenda, but there's no continued story. It just feels like the same book with a different cover every year. Um, just on the Nonference, because I've read a lot about it. I didn't get a chance to go. I'm going to try again next time. But then I asked you at the start, what was the first conference you went to and what did you take away from it? And to be fair, all three of us were a bit like, I think I went to this one. I didn't really take much from it. With the Nonference, what did you guys, as I guess as all types of roles, as in being participants, being creators, being owners of it, being just involved in the online discussion around it and just the online discussion of conferences in general, what have you taken away from it, and has that changed since it happened and to where we are now?
So I can speak from a personal stand, and how that felt like for me. So the day, definitely I perceived it very differently compared to a participant, as being one of the people that were very busy in the back end. And also due to the nature of the design, imagine it as a big 1-day workshop / immersive experience at times. And moving people from one room to the other while something changes in the back end all the time. So there was no fixed seating. There was a lot of movement in formats, the way the rooms were arranged, what we were doing, how we were playing. We had embodiment. We closed with a sound bathing experience and the painting experience of the insights or takeaways. So it had a lot of elements that were maybe not traditionally linked to this concept of conference, but potentially used in smaller workshop in specific particular areas of our industry. So we really brought them together to see what they feel like for us. It was very interesting to me how well received it was. I mean, we knew that we're designing something that is new and fresh. And usually when you design something that is new and fresh, that comes across very well, because we are thirsty for novelty. We are thirsty to see something new. And there was a big echo on LinkedIn of people sharing their experiences, etc. But in that big wow, and kind of in that all positivity around that, we did receive feedback, and that was very much linked to, I expected something else. And that something else is the typical, I'm expecting more content. And so the Nonference had a very small bucket of content that someone delivered to the participants. It was all around content that we had to sense make or create. So there were a lot of moments of reflections. There was a potent activity to use artifacts to talk about learning impact. And so that is hard. We're not used to that. It's hard to learn like that, even for us stewards of learning very often. And that feedback was not preponderant, but it really, I think it stuck with me, because I realized, like, it's important to have a bit for everyone, very much like a menu, because there are still people, yes, in the age of AI, yes, in the age where content is literally the cheapest thing out there that you can think about. We've got ChatGPT. We have the world's content at our fingertips. Everything that was done so far, or created, or thought about so far. And so I feel like there's gonna be more and more importance put into spaces where we come together to debate what do we do with that content, and how the frustrations that we feel when we apply something and it doesn't work, and how do we recover from that, and how do we try again, and how do we take a piece of content and apply it to our context, and everything Dinye was talking about, right? And some of us are there, but there's still some of us that are not there yet. And for whom, yes, in our L&D industry profession, content equals learning. And so if I have not seen, if I've paid to go somewhere, no matter how affordable that ticket was, if I blocked a day in my agenda and I haven't seen an X amount of speakers talking about X amount of topics that I hopefully took notes, because not everyone takes notes, but hopefully, let's say that I was super interested, I took notes and I kind of tried to make sense of it. That equals a waste of time. And these are kind of harsh words. It wasn't transmitted like that, but you know what I mean. So and I think that was an interesting insight for me. Because I'm thinking, well, if not us, then who? And why do I attend conferences? Why do I attend design conferences that are much better designed when it comes to the experience and the learning experience than our own conferences? We're supposed to be the people that know how learning works and how we learn. And I think that was the piece that is like, okay, it's good. You need both. You need both to keep people happy, right? So there's a place and a time for everything. But I'll forever be advocating for new things. That's for sure.
Yeah.
Do things differently and just play with it. So yeah, I don't know if that answer. That was a long-winded answer, but yes, that was my personal learning, reflection, insight as a result of that.
No, I think that's great, and for both of you actually, like, if you having been through kind of big global scale conferences, the Nonference, and also just thinking about what you would like for a conference. So not just you, like as in just for you, but as in what you think a good conference for the industry would be. What kind of things do you think are like kind of staples that people need? So I kind of agreed to a point, more from probably a commercial point, big name speaker. Sometimes it just helps to get people in the door. But then, and I've gone to events where it's like, I'm going to hear this person speak. But then I found so many other things there that I didn't expect to enjoy or didn't know about, that I've kind of stumbled across, and it's been brilliant. I've also had some really bad experiences with that. So it kind of works both ways. But if I was designing a conference, I think I would need to balance that commerciality aspect of, will anyone turn up, versus if they do turn up, that's great, but now I've got to do something that's going to be useful. Otherwise, they've just turned up and I look really silly. So what kind of things do you guys think we can take from kind of both elements of the kind of standard and traditional and the kind of, I guess, the newer way of thinking about conferences? Dinye, we'll start with you.
To me, when I hear the question, the image that I have in my mind is a dojo. So my father was a karate teacher. I'm the weakling in the family. I have no idea about karate, but my brother and my sister, they do that. And they have their dojo. So it's a practice room, but it's also, there are certain principles that is part of a dojo. It's a shared space. So everyone contributes equally, whether you are a master or a student or a teacher, everyone contributes equally to the whole learning experience. It's immersive. You don't hear speeches in dojo. You hear someone show you how to do things, and then people practice together till they get it right. It's meant to be a continuous place. It's meant to be a place of renewal, of improvement. So the expectation is you will need to put hard work into there so that you come out better. So there is an adjustment from the master's point of view, but also the adjustment from the participant's point of view of how to perceive this space. So, you know, the big dojo still needs a big names master. So the one who has like black belt, whatever, to attract crowds, to make sure that people come into this dojo. But once you are there, this sense of, oh, big master, teach me things is less, because now it's more about practicing together. So
Absolutely.
that's to me, like, and I like the word that Anamaria chose, like steward of learning. So steward of learning can mean practitioner, researcher, academicians, etc. But once they come into that space together, they're all just learners, and they
Hmm.
all be hosted both ways, in a way that everyone that comes out of that space become better. And it's a yeah, again, I think I'm repeating myself. It's a continuous, it's meant as a stop in the whole practice that we have in our profession. So hopefully, if we can get that sense of like principles embodied in our conferences, I'd be happy. I'll come every year.
I think that's brilliant. I love that analogy and the use of the word adjustments. That you can't just come along and it's a big name master. So you go, oh, I turn up and I just watch them do what they're really good at. So clearly, I'm now really good at it as well. It doesn't work like that. And I think that's such a great. If you don't mind, I'm gonna steal that analogy and tell everyone else. But I will 100% credit you. Anna Maria, what's your wish list?
I'll try. I'm going to use an example of a conference that I attended, and I thought, like, okay, I like it's moving in the right direction, and obviously the Nonference is like over the top experience, amazing, but it wasn't designed for business. It wasn't designed for vendors. It was not designed for big names, etc. Now, if I were to put that aside and imagine, like, what would that model look like for it to be both a business, profitable, and kind of get the money in both from partners, sponsors, and participants, but also keep in mind the participant experience and meet somewhere in the middle and kind of marinate those worlds. I attended last year a conference in the Netherlands. First time I heard about it, also mainly in Dutch, attracts about 500, 600 participants, mainly the Netherlands and Belgium. It's called the Next Learning Conference, Next Learning. I'm going to give a shout out to Sam van der Schaans. I'm probably mispronouncing her name, but she's the curator of the conference, or the manager, the person that kind of designs the experience. And I met her through Lauren Waldman, and I actually hosted a workshop at the conference and attended as a participant, but also we were allowed to design an experience for Next Learning. So I'm going to try to very briefly describe what the conference looks like. It's not in a hotel. So they are hosting it this was in a conference centrum, a big conference centrum in a beautiful open building. And what matters a lot is the space. The space you're building your conference, you're inviting people in, matters more than you think. Whether it's a stale hotel that kind of has like 10 different rooms that you don't see what's happening and you have to move through hallways, or a big conference area where you can see the stage in front and you can move around and it's this big, beautiful, open, airy space. They had the stage. It was properly produced. Like, there were lights, there were flowers that were not out of plastic. There were lights. There were, like, it looked designed. It looked put together. It looked as if someone thought about that to create almost a vibe around it. But then around the stage, both left and right, they invited different people, both internal, external, some of the speakers, to design, I don't want to say booths, because they weren't booths. They kind of had spaces and everyone could bring and design anything there. They had workshops. And when I say workshops, I mean people worked on big flip charts and kind of printables, and there were stickies, and people went through frameworks together, etc. And so they work with tracks, really. I think it's not that hard to add in a bit of a variety. You can keep your track of the experts while having a track of the young, I don't know, the new mind, the new voices of the industry. You can keep a track with talks, and you can have a track track with workshops that happen in parallel. There's a spiel, there's a kind of a dance that you can do with that if you really want to. I saw workshops that were handpicked, meaning they were geared towards a L&D directors and upwards, like really high end. And you were attending the conference, but you had to apply to the workshop and you were handpicked. And so the person who attended that workshop, it was absolutely priceless to sit for 3 hours guided by a professional facilitator around the table with other L&D directors to talk about your day to day. That is tremendous value that can be done with simply just allowing variety in the way things get organized. Conversation prompts, conversation cards on all the tables. The vendors, no stands. The vendors had almost like a little amphitheater that they rented, like a little semicircle amphitheater, like it felt like in school, right? And there were balloons everywhere. It truly felt like a playground, right? And I thought, oh, you have the vendors, but they're not in your face. They're doing their thing, but at the same time, you really feel there's this playfulness. It's properly designed. It feels like you've landed in a conference in 2024. That was last year. I don't feel like this is your 1992 conference and here I am transported back in time, right? So all of these details matter a lot. So kudos to Sam because she did awesome. And for us, for example, she allowed us to we created what we called this learning museum. And so we really bought prompts and it was an empty experience track that people could move through, and they've built it up together. So we were writing, we were sticking, we were stamping, we had a massive collage on the floor. So the participants were able to just pick and choose, design your own adventure, and there was a lot of variety. And so that was the example that was closest to what I think is the next step when it comes to conference in our industry.
Oh, and I think I saw some photos on LinkedIn of the Learning Museum side of things, and it looked really, really different to. Yes. And I think you have to be there to experience it to get the full weight of it. But even just looking through the photos, it didn't feel like you're sat in a conference center or a big hotel. There were no rows of anything. No, it was just but people also doing what they do.
Kudos to Sam for saying you have that space. Play with it, like be creative and just allowing us that freedom. And so we presented the concept and she was like, oh my God, so cool. I can't really see it. I don't really imagine, but I trust you to pull this off. And so that was just amazing because that's what this is all about, right? So, it was good experience. Shout out to Next Learning. They're doing good stuff.
And I can imagine there's some people listening that are probably going to say, that's not how it works in my job or my role, and we don't get to do these kind of things. I guess my pushback on that is that's probably the case, but why are we as an industry overusing the word experience if that's not what you're doing? And why are you trying to strive for this kind of mad creative utopia if you just then revert back to, like you say, how things were done in 1992? So I think there's either a reality check or an identity check that the industry needs to do. And I feel like if people get out of their own way, they're going to lean more towards what you were just talking about than what's currently happening. That's my little dig at everyone that says that. Everything else was just conversation. But the last thing, because we're way over time, but I've really enjoyed this. What do you guys think? And you can pick whichever one you want. So let's say 10 or 20 years from now, what do you think learning conferences will look like? And again, this is complete guesswork. I'll be honest, I'll answer while you guys are thinking. Yes. I have absolutely no idea. I think if I was thinking 10 years from now, probably the same. I don't think much will change. But 20 years from now, there'll be a lot of people currently in the industry that would have retired, but there'll also be a whole group of people that are maybe 5 years old right now, that when 20 years from now they'll be in these roles, or they'll be in their early 30s, like, and they would have had a completely different upbringing to all of us, with technology, with society, with the way they learn, with the experiences they would have gone through. And I think these kind of things will be completely flipped, but I don't know what that looks like. Yeah, I feel very old these days, so I'm not going to guess what the young people are saying.
There's definitely got to be some TikTok involved for sure.
Yeah.
So here's, as you were talking, here's what kind of came to mind for me is I feel like the technological developments and where our world is going with AI, automation, etc., and at least from where I'm standing, I'm not an AI expert. It feels like it's moving much faster than many of us would have anticipated a few years back.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I think it's just accelerating so much faster. So 10 years or 20 years, I do expect things to be quite different, but not because we intentionally designed for that and we woke up and we were wiser, but because I think we will have to. There will be no other way. And I see them participatory for the simple fact that they will be less centered around solutions and given and facts and things that are concrete and things that are known and set in stone, as education so far has been, and much more centered around questions and challenges that are wicked, that we don't know how to tackle, that we're going to have to turn on all sides. And that invites, that is the workshopper mindset. That invites multidisciplinarity, that invites people coming together around, I don't know, a whiteboard where you zoom in and out like in the movies and you put, but the bottom line is no matter where the tech will go, I think we will have to come together to unpack, untangle, make sense, debate, discuss, and sit with these big questions that we will have. And so maybe even cross-disciplinary conferences where L&D doesn't sit in their bubble anymore and we have to come together with people, various different agents, or, well, I don't want to say agents, actors from the same ecosystem, right? But there's a beautiful vision that unfolds at the moment for me. So I don't know, Dinye, what comes up for you? Because I'm like, oh my God, I'm excited.
The first that came to my mind was the cynical part of me, or that said nothing will change. It will be the same. Because like in some of these conferences, they play back like the videos, the questions that they had from like 30 years ago, and it's the freaking same questions and challenges. So that's why like my first immediate thought was like nothing will change, it will be the same. However, if we consider the world we are living at the moment, and as you both say, the technological advancement, it will be like much faster than we thought, most probably. The planet we were living in is going to change a lot in the next 20 years. And I think there will be many external forces that will force L&D to change. And, even like when you say, oh, it will be multidisciplinary, L&D will be more cross-functional, they will need to. We will need to be more cross-functional. The way L&D working right now with this idea of training, academy, all of this, even right now is already not valid. It will be like L&D's role when the world changed so fast and so in such a major way is to make sure that companies are catching up with it. And then it's not going to be, oh, we need this skills or we need this skills, but it's like we need to survive. How fast can you help us get our employees to that level? And all of this will really shape a different conversation that we're going to have. It will, the fact that, the changes, the planetary changes, the society changes will force us to rethink about how we want to gather and for what, and what we spend it for. So to me, I don't have a clear pictures of that, but I am excited in shaping it because, just like any other industry where there's an established player and there is something bubbling from the bottom and they're ready to jump and shape it new. I feel like that's also kind of what's happening with L&D. Just, I think it's not, it's fair to say a lot of us are now in existential crisis of what are we doing, how are we creating value, etc. And those who don't want to face these big questions will struggle. And those who are, oh, this is exciting, I don't know, but I'm going to try and experiment and see how it's going to go, are the one who is going to shape that conversation. So, yeah, a very philosophical question,
Yeah.
I feel like. But to
Speaking
me, I don't have clear question, but I know for sure that we are going to change by a lot.
Yes.
Speaking of existential crisis, reminded me of the Nonference. We actually had a artifact design activity, and we received a letter from the future where L&D was not L&D. It was the human enhancement department that would go beyond learning and development and growth. So maybe we're even going to go through a rebrand in the future, and we get to leave this L&D legacy with everything that kind of comes attached to that. We get to leave that behind and morph into something new, more impactful, more, I don't know, adaptive, I guess. But I think we have to meet same time, same place in 20 years from now and see how things go, right, Greg? So maybe you want to put a calendar thing in our agenda and just see how that goes.
That's it. We'll do it. And I would also say there's an episode, I think it's episode 3, we had Toby King on, and he was talking about all this kind of thing of L&D won't be L&D. It will be like a mishmash of lots and lots of different departments. And the one thing that we kind of boiled it down to, which I think if we look at my potential assumption at 20 years from now, is that L&D probably will be called something different. But I think the one thing that will be the same, will be it's people trying to help other people. And that's probably the only thing that will be the same. I don't know what they're going to be helping them with or how they're going to go about it, but there will probably be groups of people disagreeing on how the best way to do it is. But yeah, I feel like maybe the next generation will be better at being very logical and going, this is a problem, this is how we solve it, let's just get on with it, rather than oh dear,
the same questions over and over at every yearly conference. Who knows?
Exactly.
Maybe Dean is right. Maybe her cynical lens will prove to be the one that's true. Hopefully not. We can do better than that, people. Let's do it. Yes.
Maybe in 20 years they'll play this episode at the start of every conference, be like, these guys had it. Doubtful, but maybe they will. If they do, you're welcome. Thank you so much. Just before we go, and I appreciate we are way over time, is there anything you want to plug or anything where people can reach out to you, anything you want to shout about, anything at all? This is the space we give everyone to do that.
For me, is L&D Shakers and connect with me on LinkedIn. That's it. You're going to find out about all that I'm up to on LinkedIn. I'm not keeping secrets.
Amazing.
Same with me. I am on LinkedIn, and I also I work as L&D practitioners, but I also do freelance activities here and there. If I find cool people I want to work with or cool organizations I want to support, I jump into this side projects that keep my brain ship-shape. And I don't know if that's a thing, but yeah, connect with me, have a chat, and would love to find out what others are doing, what cool things that others are doing.
Amazing. Well, thank you both when this comes out. And amazing conversation. I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you
And
for having us.
We'll speak to you very, very soon.
Thank you.
Have a lovely day.